Welcome everybody to Eye of the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card. So today's pick a card is taking you on a bit of a journey, literally. We're looking at what new Odyssey are you about to embark on and what may be some of its key stages or things to look out for. So this may have a lot to do with your everyday life, but if it is, it will still be in a very large arc in your life, like a journey of discovery, self-discovery, discovery of others, of achieving something, of manifesting something, or it could be very internal, a very internal spiritual journey within yourself to greater self-knowledge and your connection with others. Odysseys are by their nature challenging, and the deck that we're using to see the stages and set the scene is in fact the Odyssey Oracle. And I've got to say it is a deck that doesn't pull any punches, and so be prepared. I don't know that I necessarily need to say trigger warning, but I don't know. We'll see what we get. But I certainly would say that this is a real journey to discover yourself relative to the world internally or externally that you're dealing with and relative to your goals. And so we're going to be looking at those stages. As I say, we're going to look at the kind of roles that you may embody and the roles you may meet, because in any Odyssey, you don't do it all on your own. You have companions, you have helpers, and you have opponents. So it's just seeing what sort of energy you're likely to meet, how self-awareness will help you, how astrology will guide you. And I'm going to use the 8th House Tarot as a tarot, which is a very astrology-based deck, because I'm increasingly seeing astrology as a navigation tool in life. And so it seemed to fit as the way that we would connect something like an Odyssey that does require navigation. We'll also use astrology a little bit later with an actual astrology deck to have a look at the sorts of aspects you might be meeting on this journey and what planets might be involved. So, and then we'll have a bit of a wild card at the end. So that's the journey that we're going on. What I will say to you is that under each of these are two other cards from the Odyssey Oracle. This card represents the first stage, the entry into it, if you will. And then we'll see what the other stages are, so that we kind of get a sense of the whole journey. So it does give you a sense of part of this, and that may help you choose. You can, of course, choose more than one. There might be more than one Odyssey. One's internal and one external. Do whatever works for you. But in the choice, for pile number 1, we have untethered, number 37, if numbers are a key choice for you. For pile number 2, we have initiation, and that is number 44. And for pile number 3, we have dogma, which is an interesting one with the number 23. As I say, you can go to more than one if you like. And I'm sort of increasingly saying this just for anybody new or anybody who doesn't know. Just before I get into this, I do offer private readings. So if you'd like some private readings to help you navigate your own personal Odyssey or day-to-day things in your life or anything else you might be interested in, look at the details in the description box below to see my Etsy store so that you can come to me. No pressure. Nobody ever needs to feel that I'm expecting them to come and get a reading, but if you would like one, it's available. Okay, so when you know what readings you would like to go to, the timestamps are in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your readings. This is an interesting set of cards, I have to say. I always look at them, sort of uncover them and look at them before pressing record. You came to Untethered, which is, I think, of all of the 3 choices, probably the bravest one, and that's important because this Odyssey is deeply internal. It does potentially have connection to relationships and situations that you're already very familiar with, but it is actually a journey to understand where you feel that you've lost your way, or where the universe is actually trying to beckon you to a new Odyssey, but you're kind of going within and almost potentially avoiding it or expecting certain outcomes, so not actually getting in the ship and going on the Odyssey. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about an Odyssey within to understand the things that trigger you and the things that kind of keep you stuck so that you can get unstuck, and so that you can feel, now I have my ship and I also have an anchor. I find it very interesting, the first one being untethered, and this is where you are at a stage, and this is the entry point where things don't sort of seem real, you don't necessarily have a focus or a purpose, or you don't feel that there's something you would commit to and sort of work on and work towards because it is intrinsically valuable. It's sort of, it's almost the energy of, I'll sit and watch streaming shows all day rather than actually going out into the world, which is fine for a period of time, but which can become very stagnating if you stay there. And it's partly because you are probably still trying to process an Odyssey from before or something that didn't work out. And it's sort of, there is a temptation to go backwards and repeat an Odyssey in these cards rather than moving forward, because the second stage is illusion, and illusion is about where we're a little bit scared of going into the light and going to the next sort of adventure and so forth. In some ways, the familiar is comfortable. It may be stultifying, it may be challenging, it might be disappointing, but at least we know it. At least we know it. So if we don't have a new cause to go towards, well, it's easy to fall back into thinking, I just need to go back and look at what I have that is familiar. I'll be able to make it better. I'll be able to make it into what I wanted it to do. And then if you take that path, you end up in phantasm, where you hit the same disconnect, the same lack of sort of synchronicity between what you're trying to do with your own path and what you're meeting in the world. And it's often one where you meet a false enemy, or you think there's a false enemy. Like, I'm trying to become a big YouTube star, and my competitor over here is the enemy, and it might not have anything to do with that person. It may actually just be the YouTube algorithm. That's just an example, but it's where we think, or we give more power than we should to other people and to their impacts, but maybe we have a false dichotomy operating because we're trying to still work out what didn't work with something else. Because you haven't got sort of something to take you forward. So I think this is actually what Spirit wants you to do, is go, okay, it's okay to do an Odyssey within that goes back to the familiar and looks at it in a different way and reconsiders, who were friends and who weren't friends within this, what were blocks and what might have been protections and all that kind of thing, as a preparation for the next Odyssey. And I don't normally say this, but I feel if you did come to this one, what I would say is take whatever is useful in this and go through that process. And then maybe, in a month or two's time, come back and choose one of the other two. I'm only just starting to film these, so I don't know whether we're going to get similar sort of things in the others. But at this point, I feel like this is the preparation before the Odyssey, but it's an internal Odyssey that has to happen because you either haven't fully let go of some past dream, and you need to do that and see it for what it is and your role in it and what you could have learned from it, or you have done some of that work, but you're sliding back into that because at least you get a sense of progress there because you don't know where you want to go forward in the end. So I think that's what we're talking about here. And as I said in the introduction, these cards don't pull punches. So this is definitely saying, this is something that needs to be focused on. So we're going to use tarot now, and we're going to explore each stage. I don't have a particular timeline for this because it will depend upon what you do at each stage. This could be something that you do in the space of a day, and then you start to say, what would I commit to if I've learnt from the past? It might be something that takes you months. There's no shame in any of this, and there's nothing wrong in it. This is very, very human. If we don't have a new cause yet and we haven't fully processed the past one, it's very easy to go through these stages. So the important thing would be then to use the stage to close it out. Like it's really, we're going back and we're just tying up the knots, and we're just kind of like putting it all in a box and putting it away, but we have to actually go backward before we can move forward. So let's have a look at the energy around the first stage, untethered. This is where you are at the moment. Six of air, Six of Swords, death, the Devil reversed, the Hermit reversed, the Page of Fire or the Page of Wands, and Seven of Pentacles. Okay. So you do want to grow something. One of the reasons that you're here is that you're actually patient. And that's normally a really wonderful thing. And speaking as someone who's not patient, I really admire people who are patient. So you have the patience and you can make that work for you. If you do need to go back and look at something, you have the patience to be painstaking about it, and you have a growth mindset. So that's good. You're not untethered and then moving back into the familiar and old tropes almost, because you aren't prepared to put the work in, you aren't prepared to grow, or you don't have the patience to deal with it. You actually do have a growth mindset, so that's good. You're also very creative with Page of Fire. So this is saying this has got nothing to do with a lack of energy, a lack of stamina, or any of those things. This is because you didn't necessarily, there's a choice that needs to be made to move away from something that you probably did put a lot of energy into, and you did put a lot of passion into, and you did see some growth. But at this point, it's gone as far as it's going to go. And you need to move on, Six of Swords. You do know that the peace comes in moving on, but that choice, it's hard. It's hard to let go, because you haven't integrated it within you spiritually. You're kind of living whatever this situation was very much in the material world, and you haven't processed it. And you're actually someone who would naturally process things when you have, Scorpio energy around the death card coming up. You actually do need to go through the whole cycle. Some people can kind of just let go of things in the past and not examine them particularly and move forward. There is some utility in that they don't get caught in loops. But on the other hand, they often don't learn anything either. So I think that this is not saying this is a bad process. It's just saying this is a process that's fairly familiar to you. It's almost like the journey to the underworld to process it, understand it, and let it go. So I don't think it's actually that you're avoiding moving forward. I think it's that you won't even know your next step or where to navigate to till you've done this process. Then you will get the energy to see something through. But I do feel as though there's something unfinished. You feel something unfinished in this, whether it was understanding the other people and how you viewed them, or whether it was understanding how much of a shift had to occur to really achieve something. There's something unfinished. So I think it's the healthiest way you could have untethered. I think it's you understanding your own psychology. And as I say, there's a lot of utility to that psychology, but it's also a need. You have to do this to free yourself and to bring something up to the conscious understanding before you can move on and do something else. So then, okay, if we go, well, this is for you as a kind of scorpionic energy, the process to clear out the past to allow you to then tether to something in the future. Like, you can't do it without doing this. You're then inevitably in stage 2, there's a big risk that the familiar, you can settle back into that and just settle, full stop. So what is the energy around the second stage of this Odyssey? 4 of Air, so 4 of Swords. Queen of Fire reversed. 9 of Pentacles. 8 of Swords reversed. Queen of Cups reversed. And 2 of Pentacles. Okay. So this is saying it is a natural stage for you. This is partly how you get things into balance, Air, Jupiter and Libra. It is ultimately an expansive and good thing to do with Jupiter and Libra, and it brings you into balance. But it does take the wind out of your sails a bit with the Queen of Fire, or the Queen of Wands reversed. It also, there's something in what you need to let go of that didn't self-actualize for you. And I think you really thought it was going to. But it looks as though you found yourself alone rather than, in a group or whatever. You probably did have some success in whatever this was, to be honest. And you developed quite a bit of independence as a result of it, and a different way, a free way of thinking. So there were things that were good. This is the issue. This is why it's easy to fall back and go, okay, well, maybe it isn't a new journey. Maybe I just go back and relook at this. I got close to self-actualizing. Materially, it was pretty good. I felt pretty free, but you weren't emotionally aligned. Like this was not the thing that would emotionally and in the end, in terms of self-actualization, take you where you needed to go. It's just that what was familiar was that there was some success in it and there was some freedom in it. But this is saying you have to look at both of these. You have to look at what was good in it, because you can maybe carry some of that forward to what you do next. but you also have to understand why it is that this particular pathway was not going to be it for you. It wasn't really going to work. Then you'll be able to make a practical decision about what to do next. You don't even know what the options are yet because, I mean, it feels a little bit like someone who, has done pretty well in a work, and like maybe, they've come up the ladder a bit, they've been doing well, they feel like they are respected, but it's not really their creative and emotional connection. But they can't even think about the other choice because to some degree they're stuck in the safety, security and the feedback, the external feedback. But this is saying you need to internalize a sense of actualization and a sense of emotional connection. It can't just be how free are you allowed to do what you want in this environment and how much money can you make. It's also how true is it to you. And you can only know that by going within. Then you know what the options are because you don't right now. This is why you're untethered. It's not that you've been a lawyer for, 15 years and you suddenly go, I'm ready to be a architect because you don't even, like the architect idea hasn't even come up yet because you have to work out what, in a sense, it's not necessarily what would you sacrifice, but what is the thing that's keeping you where you are compared to the thing that's making you want to go on a new Odyssey. Then we come up to the phantasm. This is where we start to go, how much of this issue is us and how much of it is other people, and are we seeing this clearly? So would being a lawyer be right and you feel self-actualized if you were just in a different organisation, a different law firm potentially, or is it something much more fundamental? And this is typically, if you're feeling not quite somewhere where you need to be, this is a typical sort of way to follow on where it's like, okay, I have these enemies, I have these people that are blocking me. So let's have a look and see what that stage is. King of Fire reversed, King of Earth reversed, Page of Water, other people, Judgment reversed, 10 of Pentacles reversed, and Ace of Wands reversed. Okay, so there is a sense of suppression. If you have a sense of enemies or other people or whatever, it's suppression. This is authority figures or people who are competing with you. These are people who hold the keys to the kingdom of the next level. You're doing okay with whatever this is materially. Like, it's not that you feel insecure, but it's like the keys to the kingdom have been withheld from you. And you thought, and I think this is part of the thing, I actually think you thought this thing was going to be what would really emotionally connect for you. But because you've got these two king energies, the kind of like the powers that be, materially and kind of egotistically, kind of like there's a Queen of Wands reverse and then there's a King of Wands reverse. It's like that side of you is being kept down by other people, or that's what you feel. So you could feel like a woman in a very male workplace, for instance. It doesn't have to be that. It's just an example. But there's definitely something here about people who are competing for resourcing. And you had thought you came from the pure and the innocent side of things. But you're not getting the call. You're not getting the next step. You're not getting what you would expect to get. So your material sense of progress is just starting to dissolve because it's like, you've hit the glass ceiling, you've hit the problem point, and so your sense of passion is starting to decrease. But it's got to do with other people. And so then the question is, it may well be that that's absolutely true. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily a false enemy. But even if it is a true enemy in the sense of competitors where you are going to limit how far you can get, since this journey is kind of about understanding that, letting it go and finding what else to commit to, in a weird way, the enemies become guides for you because they're the thing that actually shifts you out of the comfortable into seeing what isn't working for you so that you can move on. So the navigation of this is to understand what worked in this and what didn't, and how can understanding that and understanding yourself allow you then to work out, to be less untethered, to be able to work out, well, what do I do next? Okay, so let's have a look at roles that you fulfill and then roles that you meet, because I do feel, particularly with this one, there is something about how you're interacting. So we're going to do a couple of roles that you fulfill on this Odyssey, or maybe more realistically in this, the precursor to the Odyssey that has made you feel like this, and kind of flip back to try and rework it if you can. and then roles that you actually meet. So we're going to use Greek mythology for that. So roles that you have fulfilled in the lead up to this and or your assessment of it. Nike, the need to win, or I should win energy. That is a victory energy. And Zeus, oh, look at this. So this, I think this is about you coming into your own authority and your own sovereignty. And what this was all about, there was something about this where whatever the journey was, you should have, your role was to win and to become sovereign. But look at this, we've got these two kings reversed here. There were other people competing in whatever this was. That's what this is saying. So what roles did you meet? Chaos. Okay. So you thought that you were on the road to success and climbing the ladder or whatever it was, but there was other people came in and they created chaos. Like it was, and it was probably because of competition, but it literally could have been that as well too. Like ill-directed passion and ill-directed material things that brought a breakdown of the economic situation could literally have been that sort of people came in and were very damaging to a workplace you were in or something like that, or came in and restructured the whole thing and suddenly it was different. So you ran into chaos. It was like unexpected. And Kronos, yeah, Zeus and Kronos. Okay, this is classic. So again, this is actually telling you there was some truth. It wasn't really a false enemy, but it was a mythical kind of thing. They may not have actually been the enemy. It's also telling you that this role your Odyssey at the moment is to understand these. And once you understand these roles, you will understand how it is you can win, but maybe next time around in a different environment. Because this is a classic. Kronos was Zeus's father. Kronos did not want to give up the reins to anyone. And so when he heard a prophecy that one of his children would overtake him as the king of the universe. So when he had children, he'd swallow them. He made his wife bring them and swallow them. But she got tired of this. And when Zeus was born, she actually put a rock in the swaddling clothes, brought that to him. He swallowed that, thought it was fine, but Zeus actually grew up and took over. So this is all about the reason that you are untethered and you are now going back to the familiar and trying to understand the personal dynamics is there is something in this which you genuinely should have won. And sort of a chaotic, paranoid sort of energy from other people and probably from a competitor got in the way. But once you understand that, you can claim your Zeusdom, so to speak. But it may say that you were on your Odyssey being very upfront, like Zeus, just living, being upfront. But the way that Zeus won was through a certain degree of being a bit hidden away and not showing their hand too quickly. So there may be something there that you can actually excavate. This is the reason you're untethered, is there's something that you, in many ways, was rightfully yours but didn't happen. So now it's about understanding that well enough to be able to move forward and find it in a different place, in a different form, in a different relationship, whatever it is. This is very clear as to why you're in this stage at this point. You need to understand it, and you need to understand it was yours to win. Like this was yours to win. Okay, so let's have a look at the personal aspects. We're going to use a deck that has phrenology in it, like a couple of personal aspects that you will use and a couple that you will meet in this internal journey to understand this properly. So for you will use amativeness. So being able to attract others. It can be too much. So I think this is attracting the right things as opposed to the things that are just indolent, because there is a little bit of an indolence, I'll sit and watch Netflix all day or something like that. What you attract, and I think it's asking you to think about that. What did you attract? Who did you attract into your life? And where was that something that worked for you? And where was it a bit sort of licentious and it took you off your course? So understanding that, because it may well be that allowed this energy to win in some ways. And you also have self-esteem. Yes, this is about you regaining your self-esteem, because this has rocked you a bit, and being dignified. but not being egotistical. This was yours to win. This was not really, it should have happened, just as Zeus should have naturally succeeded Kronos, shouldn't have ended up with that block or that fear or that risk. So this is about you getting that dignity and that sense back. And understanding, egotism and arrogance, and that neither of those things were the case. You may have, in fact, been told you wanted too much and you were too greedy and it was too soon. This may have been one of the things that was projected on you. So this is to reclaim that. So what do you meet in terms of potentially the false enemies or the actual enemies or the other people associated with understanding this? You meet, matrimony. All right, so for some of you, this could be about a relationship that you should have had and somebody else won that situation. Otherwise, I think that it is saying that there was someone in this situation that was a good connection for you. So I don't think it's the chaotic Kronos character, but there was probably someone that was good and that you could connect with and move forward. Or that somebody who was in a position to decide between whether you won or somebody else won had some sort of pre-existing loyalty to the other person. That's a possibility if that's something that you met. What else did you meet? Hearing, alertness, people who were listening to what you were saying and so forth, or weren't listening. So they were either very much listening to what you were saying because they wanted to win in some strategic game, or they weren't hearing you. You just weren't being heard because the alliances were already made. But as I say, this thing was yours to win, and you can now win something similar. But you're meant to have learnt from this and understand, and it's your nature. You need to go back and actually work out what was actually happening. So as I said, using astrology as a bit of a navigation, what I want to do is I want to have a look at, for each of the stages, an aspect pattern that would be an important navigation for you, and then we'll look at what planets are associated. So firstly, for where you are right now, where you're feeling untethered, because it's been a bit of a shock to the system, you should have been successful at something or got further than you have. The aspect pattern is trines. So this is saying it will be easier to do this. And I think it's partly because you are the sort of person who can go within and do this. It's natural to you, that scorpionic energy. It'll be easy if you do this the most. So even though it feels untethered, this process is relatively natural to you. So what planets are in trine to each other? Venus, so what you love, the heart, all of that. This could be about love for some of you. Otherwise, it's what matters to your heart. And Jupiter. Okay, also, again, Jupiter is Zeus. You were meant to win. It was meant to be easy. It was yours to win. So whatever happened, it didn't quite, and that's why it's familiar, because it's kind of like if I just went back and I adjusted things, could I shift it? But it does want you to understand it and move on, and to say that this wasn't about you, that the energy, what you're navigating towards should be relatively simple. And in fact, what it's saying to some degree is that when you start to hit rocks, so to speak, in navigating, that's an indication that perhaps the choice that you've made, going back to the Two of Pentacles, is not the right choice. The thing that you're meant to win and is yours is already yours and will be easier than this was. So understanding where were the things that were signs so that in your next Odyssey it's easier, that's what this stage is about. So then that means you have to go into the stage where you go back and it's familiar and it's easy to fall back into it. But if you study it, what's the energy of navigation then? T-square. So this is more of a challenging aspect. Not challenging in the sense that it's awful, but because action is required and pressure will be put on one particular point. Because there's two planets in opposition, and they, in a sense, their need to balance puts pressure on the third planet to find that balance. It's a perfect aspect actually for this. It's like saying, going back and looking at it, you look for the pressure points and where is the key thing that needs to shift or change so that you don't get stuck. It won't allow you to get stuck actually, because literally that pressure is there. So that's good. It's you don't just go in and just fall back into things. There's something in your nature that forces you to understand, and that is what's operating here. So let's first of all look at the two planets that are in balance, that need to be in balance for you to understand this. Chiron, healing, wisdom. Do you take too much on? How do you heal? Secondly, we have Mercury. How does what you believe about things, what you say and how you communicate have an impact on this? So I think there's almost like journal things when you're doing this. Write it down, talk to people. Part of this is not just to fall back into the familiar, but is to actually articulate what needs to be healed in it. What's the planet that this really puts pressure on? The sun, yeah, your life path. Who are you? Where are you going? So allow yourself almost to journal and even like have an internal dialogue about what is the difference between where I am right now, what needs to be healed, and where I know that I want to go. Okay, so then thirdly, when you're navigating the phantasm, which is probably the trickiest one because it's not untrue that there's something unfair that's happened here, but as I say, in a weird way, sometimes those people are not really enemies. They're more a gift in a different clothing, though Kronos was definitely not a good god. But like, let's see what the aspect is in understanding with more clarity how the roles of other people impacted you. We have opposition, yeah, and that makes sense. Who and what were you in opposition with? So let's see what planets we're talking about there. Pluto, yeah, power, power. The power. This is a power dynamic that we were looking at first and foremost, and that was in opposition to Neptune, the ideals, the dreams, and what was real. And also, what was the real power dynamic? I think that's part of it. I actually think this Kronos Zeus thing and Nike is really important to this because it's how you understand that you may have been in a situation where you didn't get the reward or the elevation or whatever it was or the victory you should have got, and there might have been a bit of gaslighting that went on, which then made you think, like who were truly friends, who were truly enemies. There was a competitor here, and that person, even if they weren't an enemy on a personal level, there was a power imbalance, and it looks to me like you were gaslit a bit. So I think given that, that's why you have to go through and use your process to understand it a bit more clearly. Okay, so lastly, let's get you a wild card. So I'd like you to choose a number between 1 and 3 because depending upon which one you choose, that's your wild card. So it's a wild card energy to also help you understand this journey. So pause if you need to because I'm about to deal out. So if you chose number 1, we have I am protected. If you chose number 2, let's create. And if you chose number 3, the mermaid and the puppet. Okay. So if you chose number 1, I am protected, this is a very strong indication that yes, this is a bit of a journey to the underworld to understand things, but you will always be protected, both within your own spirit, I think, but also and intelligence, but also by the universe. So it's to bring balance and management projects working together, focus. There is something here about your life's work, and you will be protected to get to where you need to go. If you chose number 2, there's something innately creative in all of this. So it could have been a creative project or it could have been a passion project, and you should have been successful. But it's just saying don't let that stop. Like don't lose the creative fire because of this. There is manipulation here. You have dealt with manipulation, but use your willpower, use your manifestation to create something new. Understand the flaw in the weave so the next weave works for you. If you chose number 3, we've got the mermaid and the puppet. We've got two-faced manipulation and love, inaccessible heart, fascination. This is the one, picking up the attraction energy and all that kind of thing. This is the one that's most likely to be about, losing in love or being manipulated by a power dynamic. So it's just to affirm again that don't fall back into the familiar because it's not going to provide what you want. Understand why it didn't, and then you can move forward. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 2, to your reading. So you came to the reading with initiation as the initiating step of the Odyssey, so that's perfectly aligned. In this oracle, though, the initiation is actually more like the Ouroboros. It's more like returning to the beginning and recognizing it for the first time sort of thing. or recognizing it on a deeper level. It is part of the kind of eternal cycle of growth, that it never sort of stops, that we just evolve and we evolve and we evolve. So there's something in that. You have reached a graduation point, an ending point, a natural ending point, and a natural beginning point. So this whole thing aligns with having been on a path for a while. This is actually a very spiritual reading, this one. This is not, I don't think it's particularly material. We'll see. I mean, it has material implications, I think, but yeah, I think it's mainly spiritual. It's about what is the path that you want to follow? What would you commit to? What would you make your sort of spiritual vow to? And what have you learned in a particular path that's probably not working for you entirely anymore? And understanding how to get the breakthrough to find what is authentic. This is what this is about. Because initiation, as I say, is understanding the process of continual improvement, continual growth, and understanding yourself in the greater scheme on a higher level. And that leads to a stage 2 of a vowel, and this is why it's really interesting, and it's also why I think that it's very, very spiritual and internal, because initiation can imply things like a higher level within some sort of magical order or spiritual order. So some of you may literally have done that. Otherwise, it's, you get to a higher level in a work organisation and have a different perspective, or you get to a higher level in a community group or a political organisation and you understand it more, and so forth. The thing about a vowel is understanding what isn't right for you anymore. It's actually, the energy of this is having got to a particular level and understood it at greater detail and at a higher perspective. It's almost as though this is then asking you to work out what doesn't work for you in this. And it would typically turn up, if you'd followed a guru and then you get to a point of realizing they're not a guru anymore, or they're not your guru anymore, or you become a guru to yourself potentially, or they can take you so far but no further. So this is actually a process, having reached a level with something, of almost detaching from it to say, where do I go next? So it's not an easy thing, I don't think. I think that it's almost a bit of a surprise. What I feel here is the kind of I reach this level of a magical order and then I realize that doesn't align with me, or the people at this level aren't doing what they preach, or something like that. And I've got to actually disavow that to be able to find what I would connect to. Or I've got to work out what is and isn't working for me, what is in my tree of life, so to speak, compared to others. So this is a process of working that out. And then we have resigned. And that is where you work out that there are certain things you cannot change, certain things that are just the way they are, and you accept that, and then the breakthrough occurs. So in a process like that, it could be, I've reached a particular level of a spiritual order. I'm now not sure that I agree with everything in that spiritual order. I either accept that I can't change it, and so that propels me to create my own spiritual path, or I accept that it doesn't have to be exactly what I think, that it's okay as it is, and I can proceed because I can still continue on the evolution path. So this doesn't necessarily mean you leave that which you've initiated in, but it could. Otherwise, it's that you realize that there's no sort of spiritual traditional path that is solely built for you and is only going to meet your expectations. So it's one or the other, I think. So let's get a little bit more information on it. We're using the 8th House Tarot because I'm using astrology as partly our navigating guide for this, so connecting that to the tarot archetype. So we're just going to look at each stage in turn. So firstly, the initiation stage, the ending and the beginning, and the kind of seeing things from a higher order than you have seen them before, the graduation stage, whatever it might be. 8 of Cups, 2 of Wands reversed, 7 of Pentacles reversed, 2 of Pentacles reversed, Ace of Fire, the Sun reversed, and 4 of Cups reversed. Okay. So I think there is an emotional release operating, because it's almost as though, what I find interesting with this is 2 of Fire with this kind of energy is we've got the hand coming down, and then we've got a hand coming down again, just in the way that it's fallen. This is an emotional release for you because it actually should simplify your path. it should make a choice around the path almost inevitable because you've initiated or got to this particular level. You've let go of emotional energies. You're on the path. But it's meant to be growth. And this is kind of suggesting that it's not. That some of the choices that you thought you didn't even have to worry about aren't necessarily going to grow. So you have a bit of a sense, even at this point, that this might be what you're heading towards. But you still want to move towards it. You haven't completely tried to align your life path with it yet. Because for you, it's a very big thing to have succeeded with this and to have got to that level. It's broken through an emotional block to get there. It wasn't easy to get there. And you're full of enthusiasm, but you haven't even started to think about, is this my path? It's just, I want to achieve this. And it's almost a sense of like, yes, and when I get there, it'll be simple. I won't have to make all these choices anymore. It will be obvious. But almost immediately you hit this thing of like, oh, but I've got to grow more. Oh, but there's other levels. Is that kind of energy operating? So let's have a look and see what we get with the avowal thing, where it's sort of like, okay, what does and doesn't fit? Ace of Cups, Three of Cups reversed, Nine of Cups reversed, Knight of Pentacles reversed, the Hierophant, the Fool, and Six of Swords reversed. Okay. This is a very heart-centered thing for you. So that bit does fit. And you respond from your heart. The whole process that you've been doing, whether it was deliberately spiritual or whether it was some sort of, psychological exercise that you went through or whatever it was about clearing emotional energies to open your heart. And that has occurred. So you're ready to make a vow. But with the Three of Cups reverse, it's like the people that you're with at this level were not quite what you expected them to be like. And with Nine of Cups reversed, it's like it's close, but it's like, and you want to open your heart, but something is not really fully allowing that. And you feel like, oh, I thought this was my home, but it's not going to be a home. It's a temporary way station. So it really does feel like joining a particular spiritual order, getting to a particular level, and then finding it's not quite what you thought it was. That's what it feels like, or some other analogy in a workplace or a group or whatever. Because there is tradition here, with the Hierophant. It's a traditional thing. There isn't a lot of room to move. And so Uranus, Uranus, the Fool energy, wanting to kind of like talk to the Hierophant, it's not an easy energy. It's like Taurus goes, no, tradition, stubborn, not moving. Uranus says, but we've got to do new things. We've got to grow. This is a situation where you thought that reaching this level you would be with your people, it would be evolved and you could continue to grow. But you've actually found you reached a level where the growth isn't happening anymore. The new energy isn't happening anymore. And so you're up against tradition when you want to do something new. And so this is why you're not feeling this is what you expected it to be. So then resign. Let's see what that is, because it's either that you go, okay, it's not perfect, but it'll do, or you go, this isn't right for me. So let's see whether we get a sense of departure or kind of compromise operating. Nine of Swords, Strength. Six of Pentacles reversed. Knight of Cups reversed. Judgment. The Chariot reversed. Five of Wands. I think that you stay. This is what it's looking at. I don't think you throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't think that you go, okay, you've achieved something to get where you are. I think you stay. But it does worry you. So there's mental stress around this. You're strong enough for it and you're equal to the challenge. There's no doubt about that. But you're a bit emotionally closed off from the other people around you because there's a lack of synergy. You felt called to this. So I think whatever this is, spiritually or work, whatever, the cause or the overall belief structure is very powerful for you, and it's hard for you to just walk away from it. So I don't think you do, but I think you slow down to understand, with the Chariot here reversed, to understand where the conflict is. And I think you ultimately find it's less than you thought it was going to be. But there is compromise. So I think this is a journey of having reached a level, thinking I'm now with my people, this is all going to just align, then realizing actually I'm stuck, I'm just with a group of people and it's not aligning completely, and then going, but it's aligning enough or I'm committed enough to the cause or the belief or whatever that I will find a way through this. That's what we're looking at. Okay. So let's see what roles you have sort of mythically using Greek myths and what roles you meet from other people, because this really is about your perception of what this group or this belief structure should be compared to theirs. So what roles are you showing in this Odyssey? Hercules, strength, being strong. And you will need to be strong for this. So you're strong enough to deal with it. It's saying strength. You're strong enough to deal with it. So your strength is coming to the fore. And Odysseus, being prepared to go on the journey and being prepared to be in an environment, 6 of Swords reversed, where you're not sure what's coming. So you are kind of on a hero's journey here. It would not feel right to you to just walk away, I think. So what are you meeting? What roles mythically are you meeting, Pile 2? Zeus, the power, the authority, the people, the Hierophant, the people who have the rules. You have to deal with that. You have to accept that there are rules and there are further layers to go to, and those that have authority. Who else do you meet? Hera. Wow, that's interesting. For some of you, you may be in some sort of group where there's a power couple. I mean, Zeus and Hera are the king and queen of heaven. Like, there is something here about powers that existed before you and that you have to be able to work with. So you're strong enough to do it and you're prepared to do it, but you aren't the holder of the power and the decisions here. That's why you compromise by the looks of things. I don't think it's going to be terribly bad, but I think it's a little bit of an adjustment. So let's see the personality energy. So what personality energies are you showing to others in the Odyssey? Alimentiveness, appetite. You're hungry. You're hungry for knowledge. You're hungry for being included. You're all of that kind of thing. And I don't think, like at its worst, it could seem like you want too much or too much control, but I don't think you're going to do that with Zeus and Hera being the energies you're coming up against. What else? Self-esteem. You do know you're strong. You do know what your strengths are. You have dignity. You're not going to become sort of like whiny about it or whatever. You're going to work through this in a good way. And you know the difference between dignity and arrogance and egotism. So you're not going to actually put these people offside, I don't think, but I think it is a bit of a surprise when you realise you thought maybe you were getting to something that wasn't hierarchical and then you find out it actually is. So let's see what you meet. Concentrativeness, focus. Okay, the ones, whether it's the leaders that you meet or others, there's a very big focus on the cause or the belief structures or the spirituality. You meet that, and I think you respect that. And tune, resonance. What they say is still resonant. There is still something there. But you will also pick up a bit of dissonance. It's like what you're balancing is the resonance that drew you to this, and then where there's dissonance, where things are said and then other things are done or whatever. So, but I think it's saying if you focus on the resonance, that will give you the energy you need to make the best of this. Okay. So we're going to have a look at astrology, and what we're going to do is we're going to get an aspect for each stage, and then we're going to see what planets are involved. So for the first stage, the initiation, which is kind of exciting, and you're rising up and you're ending a period of almost learning or preparation and you're on to the next stage. The aspect that is there is the T-square. Okay, so very much almost immediately you're going to have a sense that this is putting pressure on you in a different way. I think you are represented in a way by this planet. These are two planets in opposition, which are trying to balance each other, and this is putting pressure on this third planet. So let's see what the planets are. Let's see what the two planets in opposition are. So the first planet in opposition is Uranus. So change, energy, revolution. And you might have wanted to revolutionize something, and then you get a bit further up and realize it's not that easy. And then that's in opposition to Chiron, healing. Okay, so on a spiritual level, this might be a group that really is about healing and caring and all of that sort of thing, but you thought that this was sort of also going to revolutionize the world, but there's a kind of like a balance that has to be done between the healing energy and the change energy. And it puts pressure on you, so you're represented as Pluto. Yeah, you thought that this was going to be a very powerful thing, I think, for change and healing. And you're going to find, I think, that the situation isn't as change-oriented as you thought. I think that's the issue. There's more healing-oriented than change, and you're a little bit more Uranian and Plutonian. Okay, what's the aspect when you have the avowal and you're starting to think, what do I avow, what do I commit to, and what do I disavow? The aspect energy is sextile. This will be easier than you expect it to be. It's a bit of a shock to the system, but the energies are actually a little bit more harmonious than you think. So what planets are we looking at? Mercury. It's going to be easier to discuss this and talk it through and understand it than you maybe at first feel. And Saturn. Yeah, you will be able to speak to power. And you'll be able to speak truth to power, I think. You just won't necessarily shift their viewpoint as much as you might want. Okay, and then when we have resigned, where I think you're going, okay, I'm going to compromise. This is still worth it. The aspect that we get is a yod. Yeah, because this is fate. This is the finger of fate. This is like the planets here are kind of like describing why you're doing this in the first place. Like, what was this really about? And you were meant to be in this place. So the planets, Black Moon Lilith, so that's like processing all the things that are deep and Plutonian or whatever. So there's something about that. It's sort of the desire nature, and sometimes can be a little bit vampiric. We have Jupiter. Okay, so this is about dealing with the excesses of desire, I think. So that's why we have the appetite thing over here, actually. This has something to do with working out what you can and can't consume from this in a way. And we have the moon, yeah, and the sort of spiritual, psychic sort of energy and the emotions. There is something in this environment that will actually help you moderate any kind of like out of balance desire or hunger, really, for something. So it helps you with that. This environment helps you with this. But it's still a hierarchical environment, and it doesn't want as much, you're a very Black Moon, Lilith, Pluto, Uranian sort of person, and this is more traditional and structured than you possibly thought. But you will find that it helps you in some way, even if it's a bit surprising. Okay. So last but not least, we're going to get you a wild card, and what I'd like you to do is choose a number between 1 and 3, because depending upon which that is, that's the wild card energy for your Odyssey. So pause if you need to. If you chose number 1, the gift. If you chose number 2, I am impulsive. Now that's interesting. And if you chose number 3, midnight breakfast. Okay. So if you chose number 1, this gifts that you have and gifts that you will develop through this are actually worth it, I think. And part of the initiation is probably getting the key, the revelation, seeing what the truth is, and having the gift of like a higher level of understanding. So even though, as I say, it won't turn out to be exactly what you thought it was going to be, it's enough for you to work with. If you chose number 2, I am impulsive, competition, take the risk, hasty action. I think this is don't do that. Take time in this space. It's going to be easier than you think. And if you actually have a conversation rather than just respond, then you're going to find more places where this is helpful to you than the opposite. And if you chose number 3, midnight breakfast, alternative solution, expect the unexpected, plan B. This is you saying, okay, this is you in the resign thing going, plan B will work for me. There is a different way to nourish myself here. So I think this is actually very positive, but it's just a little bit of at first it's a bit of dismay when something isn't quite what you thought, but I think in the end you'll be able to get enough from it, even if you don't stay in it really long term. But for the moment, this is going to be a journey or an odyssey that's worth going on. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. So you came to the reading with Dogma. That's stage one. Then we have sever, and then we have invitation, which shows a very interesting process or journey to go through, starting from something quite rigid and moving to something that is inviting and open, but what one needs to do to get there. But this is interesting when one actually looks at what these cards represent. It's a pretty good Odyssey to be looking at in the current world, because what it's really about, it's an invitation in general for you to consider where either you are being too dogmatic, which is what this largely talks about, to be frank. As I said, this deck doesn't pull punches, but also where you might be meeting dogma. So where there's a kind of a sense of who's right or who's most right. And then looking at what relationships can survive that scrutiny. What ones are you able to open up your mind enough to accept different points of view, and what ones are not able to open up their minds enough to accept your point of view? Because I think at the moment we have such a bifurcated world, and politically, socially or whatever, that there's a kind of a demonization that's operating on either side, and the slightest disagreement is seen as like groundbreakingly awful, as opposed to just slight disagreement. So this is very much the energy of the time. So I think this Odyssey is to understand that and to make wise decisions, so that you can then invite in and be ready to invite in the kind of people that you can connect with, and you don't need to feel you're always right and they don't need to insist they're always right, because that's the journey we're talking about. This is a journey towards being more open and having relationships and connections that are not based on who is the smartest person in the room, whether it's you or someone else, or who has the right beliefs, and the right moral frameworks, but actually who is truly open enough to hear both points of view. This is what this is about. So it's a journey along those lines, and it could play out in a political group or a social group or a workplace or family dynamics or a relationship. But the real thing here that you're being asked to think about is, there's a saying that a friend once said to me, like, what do you care about more, being right or having friends? I thought that was a really interesting, they weren't accusing me of it when they were doing it. We were just talking about this sort of dynamic. And I think that's kind of the thing, like, what is the boundaries of that? And this card does not talk about it as though you mean harm. It's like you've decided, that you've struggled and suffered and learned and everything, and you're right, and you're just trying to help people. It comes from a good place. But if it's dogmatic, it's actually maybe going to have the opposite effect. It's going to sever people from you. And if you're hitting that, if you are in a place where you have a slightly different view to the way we do things around here, then you're hitting that, and you may need to sever to allow the better energy to come in. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the 8th House Tarot, and we're going to do a row for each stage. I'm using the 8th House Tarot because it has sort of astrology in it as well too. So those who are interested in astrology will see some of the correspondences, and I may comment on them if I think they're particularly relevant. Once we've looked at that, we'll then have a look at the kind of balance of roles between you and other people and how that's playing out. So let's have a look at dogma first. This might give us a little bit of an idea. Is it you that's being stubborn? Is it other people, or is it a bit of both? The Hermit, the 8 of Air, the 6 of Earth, 8 of Water reversed, Ace of Water reversed, 7 of Fire, 6 of Water. Okay. Honestly, I'm not saying we will probably see where you're meeting the same thing in other people, because I think you almost always do when this is the case. But right now I'm just going to call it that I think this is the classic meaning of this card. I think it's saying that you've withdrawn from others because you have a very, very sort of set of rules. And look, they may be incredibly... sorry, I just realised that that's not showing that much on the screen, so I'm just moving it all a little bit. They may be perfectly reasonable, good principles, precepts, all of that sort of stuff, but it is showing that they've caused you to kind of like barricade yourself in and be alone. They've probably come from very spiritual principles too. So you might be trying to apply a spiritual principle to a very material thing, for instance, or an intellectual principle to a very emotional thing. But it is saying that you've withdrawn because of that. You would like to connect with others. You would like to be able to share this, but you feel as though there isn't the wriggle room either other people don't respond to it, or you can't let go enough of this particular view to welcome anything in. And as a result, it's like your heart's closed a bit. So it's asking you to have a think about that, like being brave enough to go back to almost simpler things, 6 of water, childhood, where you didn't necessarily have to be the expert. You may have had to be for some reason, and so it may have become a coping strategy actually with going back to this, with where you don't have to be the expert, where you can just be explorative and innocent. But I do think it's saying that starting to understand the amount of value you've put in being right and knowing more than other people has actually isolated you. And it's potentially severed you from others. But it's also maybe the process of when you do reach out, you're going to find, that there's some people that you actually have to sever from because they're doing the same thing. So let's see what the balance is when we get to sever. And we all do this at various stages around various things in our lives. So it's not meant as a criticism. It's just a journey to get you to an invitation that is more promising for you. So the sever energy. 4 of earth reversed, 10 of water, ace of air reversed, king of air reversed, king of water, page of air reversed, queen of air. Okay. There's a lot of other people around this. It's not just one person, I don't think. I mean, you may have like one really key relationship it's happening in, but I think it is a more general thing. This is saying that you have withdrawn. The first bit has said you'd almost withdrawn into your mind and into your sort of sense of certainty rather than into your heart. You closed your heart. This is saying the sever process actually requires you to open your heart and then determine what ones align and what ones don't align. So it's almost as though, whether it's like in a family group or a workplace or whatever, you've got to the point where having the facts and being the rational and logical one is your protection. But the only way you can really find out who are the right people to be around is to open your heart. And that means that you have to risk the fact that it's going to become very clear sometimes when there isn't an alignment, where people think very differently. But you will also find the people who think like you and feel like you. So it's saying there's more people who would probably agree with you than the opposite, I think. But it is saying that you have to allow that there are other people who have well-formed sort of emotional and intellectual views of things, that you're not talking to them at the moment. It's almost as actually what it feels like is you've almost taken on a teacher role. Maybe you're even doing that as a job. And so it's become normal to be the one with the most facts and the most logic in the room. But you've kind of gone, okay, this is it. This is the ceiling of what I need to know. But this is actually saying that when you start to really look at the quality of the relationships around you, some people it won't align with and you'll break with, but you'll actually start talking to people who do align with you, but like just come from different perspectives. So this is a process of elimination to find those that you can align with. But it isn't a who's going to agree with me because I'm right. It's more a who has other perspectives that are kind of similar to mine but different, and we're all kind of right, and so we become more right by knowing each other. So you have to move past that sort of thing of holding all the facts and the qualifications and the dogma around it and all that kind of thing, and move into I want to get even more understanding of the systems and the processes here. I want to be more intelligent by actually opening myself up to learning more from others and seeing other perspectives. That actually creates, if what you're looking for is the ideal paradigm of how everything works, that's going to get you closer to it than just thinking, oh, well, if people don't understand me, then I just have to do it all on my own, because there are others you can connect with. So the severing thing is actually about just finding the ones that it's just not going to work with so that you can actually open a dialogue with those that you can move forward with. So then that's the invitation, I think. That's when you invite each other to actually work out what happens next. So what is that energy like? The sun reversed, 5 of water, 8 of fire reversed, 2 of fire, 3 of water, Uranus the Fool, the Chariot reversed. Okay, it's a bit stop-start in the energy, and that would make sense. What this is saying is the best way to have the invitation to open even more enlightenment, more knowledge, and find the people who are different to you but aligned is to not make it about your life path and not make it about the disappointments. Like, slow that whole energy down. This doesn't have to be about you. It will become about you in terms of like inviting you to this whole other level where you feel more heard, understood, and so forth. But you kind of almost have to make it not about you to start with. Look at alternative choices. Celebrate with others where there are connections. Think about the new paths that you can have. You don't have to rush. You don't have to do anything. And in the end, you don't have to change your overall life path or trajectory. It's not going to require you to be a different person. All it's asking you to do is to not isolate yourself, but to open yourself to other points of view to find those that actually align more than you expect. That's what this is saying. You've isolated yourself because you are very smart. You worked a lot of this out, but there are other perspectives as well. And that will make it far more exciting for you in the end. So realizing that, rather than, as I say, becoming the hermit and sort of just sitting in your current knowledge. This allows you to evolve. Okay, so let's have a look and see what kind of Greek mythos roles are you performing in this Odyssey and what are you meeting in others. So for you, the harpies, okay. Like literally harping on about something or expecting the worst almost. I think it wants you to understand, yeah, you've hit people who are not going to get you at all. I don't mean literally, it's physically. I mean, you come across people who are not going to get you at all, not going to see it. And there's been arguments and it's been petty and it's been, as I say, it's very bifurcated and very demonized. And there's a sort of a sense of like, it starts with a kind of like, I want to say what I want to say. You know, why can't I say what I want to say? But you will be able to. It's just, you know, finding the people who get your language, really. The second role for you is hero. Yeah, because you are a kind of sovereign to yourself and you have gone a long way and you do have power. But it's not always understood. You know, Hera, you know, had a philandering, you know, God King Zeus partner and so forth. So you may feel that you aren't given your due. So you need to step back from that and think about how would you connect with others rather than being, not focusing on those that don't get it, but finding the ones that do. I think that's the main thing here. What are you meeting in people on this Odyssey? Hades, yeah, the stuff that really triggers the shadow in you, the stuff that makes you feel like that's really old school, that's really reactionary, that's not sort of like evolving us, that's all the shadow stuff. And you are having, to some degree, you're just trying to have a conversation from a sovereign place, but you're feeling like someone's projecting on you that you're the harpy, I think. And Achilles. You know that there's a weakness in what the other people... This is the thing, you're not necessarily wrong. It's just that you could be more right. That's the thing. And it's not that the people that, you know, you might meet that align with are more right than you. They're just right in a different way. But at the moment, you need to sever from the people who would take any dissension as being a harpy and that would make you feel that you are not honoured and make you withdraw. Because the people who do that, they've shown their Achilles heel. It's understanding, finding those that don't have that, who are open, and being open in return is the way you break through this. So let's have a look and see around personal qualities. So what personal qualities are you showing on this journey? Sight, vision. Yeah, you do. You're a visionary. Like you can see it. You can see the paradigm of how the matrix operates. I mean, it's not that you're wrong. But equally, you can say blindness and disregard. So if you think you've seen everything, you might be blind to something that someone else can see. So it's how you use that really well. But it's not that you don't see clearly. It's just, is your focus in one direction and you need the other directions. And we have acquisitiveness. So you want to own a sense of vision, I think. So you don't want... You want to be the person whose name is on the book, the person who does the documentary, the person who's the professor. And there's nothing really wrong with that, but it is important not to get caught just up in that, because that again may limit how many invitations you get to even talk about what you've done. What do you meet with other people? Vividness, which is effervescence. Like, there's some people you're going to come across who are really enthusiastic with what you're doing. And if you realise that some people just want to share and they have their own thing and their own site and all that kind of stuff, this could be very enlivening. So it's not all going to be hard. And suavity, okay. So these are the two things. There could be some that are just agreeable just to be agreeable. That will eventually become clear because they're not going to contribute. Others are going to be excited and enjoying what you do. So there might be some that try and make out that you're the difficult person when they're just as difficult, but they have the suavity around it. But on the other hand, if you're really talking to people who are bringing something to the table as well and are excited about what you bring, that will naturally gravitate to the invitations and so forth. Okay, so let's look at astrology as well. So I'm going to look at an aspect pattern for each stage and then what planets are involved. So the aspect pattern in dogma, where, you, as I say, you may need to kind of like look at yourself or understand when you're dealing with other dogmatic people and how that puts you both at a sort of an impasse. So the aspect pattern is square. Yeah, it's a call to action because things are not aligning. So what are the planet energies that we're looking at? And it's interesting, square, and we've got a cube up there. Jupiter. So this comes from a good place, okay? And maybe the people you're arguing with are coming from a good place too. It comes from wishing to expand and be beneficent, but it's kind of a bit aggressive. It's sort of like, I want to be the benign winner. And that's what this is sort of saying. And you're meeting that as well as potentially showing it. So just thinking about that, that's what's putting you in opposition with others. I mean, I think when I look at political things and I see how people are kind of demonising each side, it's actually whatever it is on their side that's called to their higher moral senses is in fact what's called them to that side. But it's also made it very easy to demonise the other side. So we are often seduced to something that isn't in our highest good via a route of our better natures. So it's something to be aware of. Okay, so then let's have a look at sever, like what you keep and what you leave behind, where you find true connection and where you break away. Yod, this is because there's a destiny. You have a destiny about this, and you are destined to meet some good people too once you're open to and you go on this journey, and it helps you fulfill your destiny. But you're also destined to come across people who just don't get it, can't see what you're saying, or are equally dogmatic. So let's see, equally or more potentially. What are the planets in a Yod? So we have Pluto, major change power. So there's a power dynamic around this. We have the sun, and it's also like whose name is on the book, who's the professor, and the moon. Yeah, and look, that's beautiful as well too, because what that's telling me is that the unconscious is operating around whose name's on the book and the power stuff, but equally the shadow energy or the underworld energy, the sun and the moon in alignment, when you find the people that you have an alchemical connection with, and as I say, you bring different properties. It's the Gestalt effect, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. It's like the people that, in fact, your theories, your ideas, your power, your energy, your message becomes better because they bring things you can't bring, and theirs becomes better because you bring things they can't bring. That's when you get the alchemical thing, and that deals with that issue. And then you can move mountains with that. Okay, and then lastly with the invitation. So this is saying you're going to move from feeling isolated and maybe a bit self-righteous in your isolation, but you're going to actually move to using your intelligence and your perspective and your vision, all of which are prodigious, in a way that really works for you. So then when we look at the invitation, stellium, this is where a number of planets come together. It is. It's about finding your group, not leading your group. You will lead sometimes and sometimes others, but finding your group. So what are the planets involved? We'll get 3 planets for that. We have Mercury, Queen of Air, the good communication, the meeting of the minds. Saturn, the sense of responsibility, a sense that like what you're doing is important and should have a legacy. and Uranus, but also able to be change, revolution that creates a new legacy that is aligned. So this is very positive, but it does take that kind of inner fortitude to go, okay, maybe I've also created my isolation as much as other people, and I can maybe reach out and find other people. So let's just finish with the wild card for you. So choose a number between 1 and 3, because depending upon which number you choose, that will be your wild card. It sort of synthesises the messages of the journey. So if you chose number 1, I am healing. If you chose number 2, man on fire. And if you chose number 3, test. Okay, so if you chose number 1, this is a healing thing for you and for others. And there may be something innately healing in what you're trying to do. So, but there is a deep wound, overcome the pain, rebuild. You have felt isolated. And I think it's almost as though a very genuine belief in a kind of mental superiority, I think you do have a mental superiority, has been your one balm in the wound of not feeling understood or feeling blocked. But that's not meant to stay. That's meant to shift. But you have to accept that there are other people who also have intellectual or emotional or spiritual or whatever things to come and offer you as well. If you chose number 2, man on fire, interested male attraction, secretive mind, uses messages, it may be that one of the people that you connect with is also a romantic or physical attraction. Otherwise, this could be the inner male energy that you have, the inner divine masculine, whether you're male or female, that is on fire once this happens. Like the invitation makes everything possible. And if you chose number 3, test, limiting beliefs, patriarchy, mental boundaries, pass the exam, this is a test for you. The universe is saying, you really are smart and you probably aced all your tests so far, but you've got blocked now. So this is a very different test. This is a test of mental, spiritual, emotional flexibility and inclusion rather than exclusion. And that will work out for you, and you will be invited to many more opportunities if you do it. But it is a test, and you need to understand it as that. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.